I did get my first roles in SDR, I was very quickly able to succeed. And so much so that the company that I was working from was like, hey, what are you doing? Like, why are you succeeding where the other SDRs are not? They're not hitting quota. And then had me, write the playbooks and teach the SDR team how to be successful. Quickly moved up into an AE role.
Welcome to the RevAM podcast by DealHub. I'm your host, Mark Lerner, Director of Growth Marketing at DealHub. In today's episode, we're going to sit down with Emerson McCuin, Head of RevOps at Haas Alert. Emerson takes us on a journey from his days as a social worker to a sales rep for revolutionizing RevOps through automated systems and intelligent processes. He showcases a radical transformation that anyone looking to break into a RevOps role or upskill their current RevOps position needs to hear. His unexpected journey and innovative use of technologies like ChatGPT offer valuable insights into navigating career changes and optimizing the sales process for outstanding results. So let's dive into his unique story and uncover how embracing change and technology can significantly propel your career forward. So with that, I bring you Emerson McCuin.
Yeah, so I got my start in sales. For the longest time, I was in social work, and as I started about wanting to have a family, I realized that I was going to need really a boost in pay, and so sales kind of came on my radar, and I needed to make that transition later in life. Like, I really had to know my stuff so that when I'd get in there, I could progress. I didn't want to be an SDR forever. And my goal was ultimately to move into like enterprise AE, right? And become an enterprise AE, make the good bucks, good money. So I studied, the science of sales. I knew that if I was going to get a job in sales, to succeed, I had to be efficient. I didn't want to be the type that just had to make 100 calls a day. I wanted to be able to make the 25 smart calls a day, right? I found when I did get my first roles in SDR, I was very quickly able to succeed. And so much so that the company that I was working from was like, hey, what are you doing? Like, why are you succeeding where the other SDRs are not? They're not hitting quota. And then had me, write the playbooks and teach the SDR team how to be successful. Into an AE role, continued that success. A lot of success as an AE comes from building pipeline, and so naturally my skills as an SDR contributed well to me being successful. The interesting thing about that was, I from that first company, I moved on to another company as an account executive, and it was a much larger company than I was used to, coming from that first role in a startup, moving to more of like a monolithic, larger organization. I didn't have the same influence over what tools that I used and my processes. Things were very locked down. It was interesting because it was a Salesforce company, and I after trying a bunch of different things, I found that HubSpot, I was actually able to connect to the Salesforce instance, and I kind of built a shadow CRM for myself using HubSpot. And I was able to incorporate the processes that had made me successful in the past and even some new ones using HubSpot. And I was successful at that, and all of a sudden I had other AEs coming to me and saying, hey, what are you doing? I'm hearing your name in meetings, like you're hitting all this success really quickly and early on. And I showed them what I was doing, and they were interested. They wanted a piece of it as well. And so I actually started working building them their own instances of HubSpot. I started charging people for it. Over time, I realized, like, hey, this is actually what I want to be doing. I wasn't as interested in making cold calls at that point. Eventually I realized, hey, this is what I want to do. RevOps was kind of like the next progression of my career, and honestly, like, once I started doing RevOps, I knew it was like, oh, this was the right place for me. So. Yeah.
We'll kind of dive into that a little bit more throughout the conversation, because you were kind of giving me some backstory there, and I think it's fascinating. But it sounds like, in your research of the science of sales, and I suspect not many salespeople go into sales having studied the actual science of it, though I might be wrong. So it seems like you kind of found your niche both in success in sales, but kind of building the process. It seems like you, and it's interesting because when I talk to people with people in revenue operations roles, they often will say it's all about the process, and that
all too often people will, their knee-jerk reaction is to find a tool to fix the problem, whereas it's most likely you have to fix the process first and then get the tooling. So, I mean, does your view of the world kind of align with that, and where do you see process fitting in?
I mean, I think if your processes are bad and you add a tool to that, it's almost like a tool can potentially like 10x whatever you're doing, and if it's bad, it's going to make it 10 times worse. And if you have good processes, then your tools are going to accelerate your success ultimately.
Yeah, it's like that concept of garbage in, garbage out. You have bad data, then you're going to get bad data out, even if you use the most powerful AI. And if you can use the best tool, but if your process is broken, then you're just going to it's just going to make it that much worse. Shifting the gears towards HubSpot and the ecosystem of HubSpot. I think it's your introduction into both revenue operations and the HubSpot ecosystem, I think, is super fascinating. So I'd love to, if you can kind of dive into that a little bit more about how you got into the HubSpot ecosystem and how you kind of got into the role of revenue operations within HubSpot specifically.
Working at that large organization and finding the only tool that worked was HubSpot, and I didn't really know much about HubSpot at that point. I was like, what CRMs can I connect to build mine? I was using like Notion and like building my own CRM there, but it didn't do certain things that I wanted. It was not an outreach tool. And so when I stumbled on HubSpot and realized that it could do all the things that I wanted to, I was like, okay, I went all in on it, right? I was like, this is going to be the tool that I use for my, just to manage my client, my potential customers, my buyers, and also outreach to them as well. And, I was able to, it's customizable and it's pretty easy to use, really. I mean, I think the more you use it, the more you realize the power of it, and there is complexity to it. But to build something that works and is efficient, it's really not that difficult. And for me anyway, I mean, maybe it's just that my mind is process oriented. And then, so once I started using that and realizing like that's ultimately what I wanted to do, and probably to a degree because that's how my mind works, I knew that I wanted to move into RevOps. And so there was a community that I was a part of just as part of my sales role, RevGenius.
Shout out to Jared.
Yeah. And I was in RevGenius one day, and I knew that I wanted to be in RevOps, and I'd kind of doubled down on some of my studying for that. And it just so happened I looked in there one day and saw that there was a company that was looking to hire a RevOps role, but they really didn't know what they were looking for. And so somebody had gone in there from the company asking for some assistance in just like building out a job description. And when I saw that, I messaged that person and said, hey, like, don't worry about building a job description. Like, hire me, we'll figure it out together, and ultimately, like, we'll build something that is customized to this company, and let's see where it goes. And ultimately, we went through the process. I think that there's a degree of like, who is this guy? Who is this person, and how can I trust them? But we talked about it, and I had enough knowledge to know like what needed to happen, and put together a plan to say, hey, in the 30, 60, 90, here's what I plan to do, and here's where we will be. And I'll say, that we did get there. It was a good plan, and I absolutely love it, and I'm very thankful that they trusted me and pulled me in.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit, I'm also a member of RevGenius, and I've seen you often talk about the ways in which you leverage, AI, which is obviously kind of all over the letters on everyone's lips here at Inbound. But I've seen you talk about actually using ChatGPT and large language models to do real things, which is always fascinating to me because I've been, doing a lot of that myself. And I think, you're putting on a kind of a course in the next week as well that I'm looking forward to. But I'd love to hear a little bit about the ways in which you're leveraging ChatGPT, AI, those kind of things to do RevOps work or to make, processes better, all those things. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
I use ChatGPT pretty much daily. And really the power for me is there's enough processes in RevOps that can take a lot of time, right? And we're all about automating and making things more efficient. So I found using ChatGPT, I could actually, I have some background in understanding like Python, and I'm pretty good with SQL, and I'm great with Excel. However, when I started using ChatGPT, I found like if I could conceptualize what I needed to do, I could pretty much make it happen. And I think I heard you use the phrase once that ChatGPT has kind of democratized some of these skill sets for RevOps and really anything in particular, and I really identify with that. You know, I don't have to pay for a developer or wait for like an internal person to create a system. Like I can go in there and really figure out how to do it myself, right? And so a couple of free tools in ChatGPT have allowed me to automate some of the processes through Python. So like record linkages, right? That's something we have data warehouses with our records that ultimately aren't linked, and you could pay for a tool and spend quite a bit of money to pay for a tool to do that, or you could use Python to automate. You know, I was able to link through our customer database, our own internal customer database, our CRM, our internal customer database, and then our financial system, was able to link 2,500 records almost automatically into a very high degree of accuracy using ChatGPT. And that's something somebody in RevOps was like, how do we do that? Like, so that's that class that I'll be putting on next week. We'll be talking about how to do that. How to, you know, a big thing we do is like importing records into our CRM, and we got to go through a whole process of cleaning the data. And usually the process is pretty consistent and similar just about every time you do it with some minor changes. So why not build a Python notebook that will do that process for you?
That story you told about, you know, connecting the records from your customer database to your CRM. Though my role is in marketing, I had a very similar project kind of dropped on my lap. It was, we needed to get usage data from our database, BigQuery, and get it into our CRM at the time. Because we were going to be going forward with a PLG motion. We needed to be able to, you know, identify on an account level when somebody takes a certain amount of actions in order to kind of hit qualification. And I tried every which way. I was like, okay, we'll do segment. And then it was like, no, the development team needs to put a pixel, and they're not going to do it, right? And so then I was like, okay, fine, so I'll go like this. And I just couldn't find a way around, and I had to just go through. And the way going through was essentially using a SQL and a reverse ETL. And I don't know SQL.
Sure.
And it was before ChatGPT, so I actually had to kind of like it took a long time, but I was able to kind of, a very rough way, get it to work. And reflecting on that, had I had ChatGPT, I would have been able to finish that project in a day. Yeah. And it took me a month of like trial and error with SQL, which was essentially learning Swahili for me. And you know, the difference between what it would have been like had I had ChatGPT and now is like so obvious to me, and even the way you were describing it. So I think that it's similar, right? It 10x's if it's something that's good and you're just kind of missing the last piece, it can help you get there. If your whole idea is kind of faulty, it's just going to help you put out something that's really doesn't work.
Yeah. The thing using ChatGPT, it's they even changed the name of the code interpreter to advanced data analysis, right? Yeah. But if you don't understand data, if you don't have data intelligence already, and you know what you're trying to get to, if you don't know that and you just upload your data into ChatGPT, for example, and ask it questions that any data and any junior data analyst would be able to say, like, let's say a sales cycle length, right? And you ask ChatGPT, but you don't understand actually what you're asking, what the results are. It'll spit out a number, but how do you trust that number? You need to specify to ChatGPT, hey, I only want the close loss and close won. Like, what's the close date there? So yeah, you do have to have a certain amount of know-how to say, hey, this is what I actually want to achieve in the end. But once you know that, then it's just figuring out how to get there, knowing how ChatGPT works enough to ask the right questions, and that can sometimes, you hear all about prompt engineering and all. You do have to understand like how to ask the right questions, and that's a muscle and that's a skill that you can learn for sure. I think one way I've been looking at it, I heard somebody once, they said, a sewing machine isn't going to teach you how to sew an Italian suit, right? You need to know how to sew an Italian suit. And then the sewing machines can help you get there a lot faster.
That's a phenomenal analogy, at least for the way AI is today, right? I don't know what ChatGPT 7 is going to be like, right? Oh, yeah. Maybe it'll be connected to Neuralink, and we won't have to do anything, right? But I think that yes, if you don't know what you're doing and you don't even know what it is that you want to get to, ChatGPT is not going to help you in any way. So switching gears a little bit, since we are at Inbound, so far, today was officially day one. The day before that was partner day, so I was calling it day zero. I don't know if you had any time to see any of the speakers or if you spent most of the day on the floor like I did, but I would love to hear your kind of overall impression of day one, some of the themes that you're seeing and what you're interested in, and yeah, just all about kind of your impression of day one.
Yeah, there's some product updates I'm certainly excited about. I mean, conditional properties. That's something that I know a lot of us who are adminning the HubSpot instance are so excited. Like, I can't wait to see what that does. And I'm pretty curious about the new lead object. I want to see where that goes. I don't know yet how I'll incorporate that, but I think it's going to be really powerful. And then, of course, like you said, AI is on everybody's tongue here. I think that a company has to be engaging with AI, and just like you just said, it's still early stages. And we're all kind of experimenting with it. We're all beta testing it and how it's going to evolve, and we're a part of that process. I'll be really curious to see how all of it works. I would say, yeah, overall, it's been a really great event. And honestly, like seeing all of these people that we've been in communication with over remotely through our various networks that we're a part of, that's been great. Meeting you for the first time was really great as well. Overall, yeah, I think it's just positive and exciting.
I definitely have to agree with that. I think that the energy on the floor, and I've spent most of my day on the floor and talking to folks, in the hallways. I haven't really had an opportunity to see much of the speakers yet. The energy has been super great, and I think that the last time I went to Inbound, well, I didn't go to Inbound; it was still virtual, and so this is really kind of the first time for me, and it's really great to see a whole bunch of people in person and make that human connection, even though we're all kind of, a lot of us are still remote, and we socialize maybe through Slack communities and LinkedIn and all these things, but actually being able to break that through that fourth wall and see people in person in the meat space, as they say, is really great. So this was super fascinating, and thank you very much.
Yep.